This footnote is about some controversial parenting questions I'm going to be asking Leslie.
I'm looking forward to this. We did mention it in the podcast that there was this trend ages ago where people on parenting forums and on YouTube were tagging each other to answer some questions that people tend to have divided opinions on. So now it's going to be all about what Leslie has to say about these things. I've been a parent for 7 years now. So, I don't know. This should be interesting.
Plus the 9 months before that.
Oh, yeah. When she was in my belly.
Yeah.
All right. You got the questions for me?
I do.
Cool.
So, question 1. Pro-life or pro-choice?
Pro-choice.
Yeah. I figured.
Yeah. There was a time in my life where I thought I could never have an abortion, but I wasn't pro-life.
Yeah.
Sometimes people say, like, for me, I'm pro-life. For everyone else, I'm pro-choice. It's like, that's not how language works. It's like, if you're saying that you yourself would never get an abortion, but you think other people should be free to do as they need, that's pro-choice.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So I don't see anyone needing to get involved in other people's reproductive decisions.
Yeah.
Yeah. Pro-choice all the way.
Yeah, I would be the same. Question 2. Baby wearing.
Oh, like, what's my stance on baby wearing?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, I should probably turn these into actual questions rather than how they're written.
That doesn't matter. See, this is the thing about baby wearing. Like, I'm very much for baby wearing. One thing that gives me a little bit of an ick around the baby wearing thing is how it almost feels like a fashion choice these days.
Yeah.
Like you're wearing a child like an item of clothing or like a status symbol. I know that's not what it is, but like, I'm Peruvian. I grew up being carried in a piece of cloth on the backs of various family members. But nowadays, when we think of baby wearing, it's the yoga mom.
Yeah.
With some boho chic, custom, like built for purpose baby wearing thing. And this isn't a judgment against people like that, but it's the kind of thing where it feels like there's this culture around it that has in some way, I know people don't like the word appropriated, but appropriated a very traditional practice. And it's like, yeah, I don't know. To me, it's a little weird that it's even a discussion.
Yeah, like it is something that would have been in every human history at some point.
Yeah.
And like culture has changed.
Yeah.
And I've actually found it interesting how when I was in Indigenous community and it was standard to swaddle the baby in a fabric thing, the Western culture had come in and started like, had stopped their traditional thing to try for them to try and feel more appropriate and like Western, like our government things tried to push.
Yeah.
And then it was the hippie in the community, the hippies around that were doing what was more traditional. For the people that weren't doing it. And that's, for me, the sadder part.
Yeah.
Is that the people who should have still felt safe and happy to do that didn't. And the people who have a more secure position in society can kind of do what they want.
Yeah, they can pretty much do whatever. Yeah. And like I wore my daughter for periods of time, but then I also used a stroller. Again, a lot of it was just energy related and convenience and yeah, I don't know.
Yeah. All right. Let's go to the next point. Circumcision.
No.
Cool.
My stance is no.
Same page.
Aside from the fact that there's no clear biological benefit and there's no need for it, is that the arguments that are often used in favor of circumcision, I just find asinine. I mean, like, weak arguments.
This is specifically child circumcision, I should say. I'm like, if you have a religious belief that you need to be circumcised, wait until you're of a consenting age and then decide if you want to go through with it. There you go. You like the look of it better? Like all plastic surgery, let's wait until you can consent to wanting to look a certain way.
Yeah. Some of the weaker arguments in favor of circumcision that I'm so tired of hearing are things like, but it's cleaner. It's like, you can clean a baby's foreskin quite easily.
Yeah.
You can clean your own foreskin when you're older quite easily. Another popular argument is like, if the father's circumcised, then it's good for, the baby with the penis to be circumcised so that their dicks match. Or whatever. It's like, oh, his should look like mine. It's like, why? I have never looked at an adult related to a child with a penis and thought, I wonder if their dicks match.
Yeah. And I mean, kids sometimes do have a question like, why do you look different to me?
Yeah.
That's one of the questions you can answer.
Yeah.
And sorry, Dad. I was brought up being told the reason we look different is because a procedure was performed without my permission when I was a baby, and I didn't want that to happen to you.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then we were like, oh, that's sad for you that you didn't get that choice.
Yeah. And also the argument about it's safer. There's less chance that the person is going to get an STI when they're older. It's like, you still got to use condoms.
Well, also, a lot of people who believe in this are like monogamous one partner sex after marriage people as well.
Yeah.
So I'm like, well, what do you think your kid's going to be getting up to?
Yeah. And again,
another big argument that comes up in the ethicists that I read on this is that the data that we have for boy circumcision versus female genital mutilation is that there's, number one, very powerful religious reasons that are holding that up, are keeping it going. We don't respect the African religion, cultures, or whatever it is that say that we should mutilate female babies. It also goes further in some cases, but if we say bring them to the equal amount of mutilation, which some of those cultures do, it's very equal to what we do to males.
Yeah.
The data we're using to justify the boys' ones is not collected for the girls' ones. And also the negative impacts that is recorded for the girl ones are not collected or recorded for the boys.
Yeah.
We're just picking and choosing the data to make it happen. Like, it's illegal in, say, Australia to even do a nicking ceremony here for girls. And yet we still allow full child circumcision in boys.
Yeah. And, I'm always the kind of person where if you can give me a good solid argument that's going to change my mind about something or change my sensibilities in some way, like, I'm all ears. I'm for it. I have yet to hear good, solid arguments for circumcising tiny babies. I'm still waiting.
Yeah.
Just the ones that get thrown around just aren't good enough.
Literally the only one is like religious belief, and I don't believe in doing stuff to your child because of your religious belief. And even in that, the Old Testament, it was done as adults in many people, and that was fine by God. He's not going to kick a child out of heaven or whatever for not having been circumcised.
Yeah.
All right, let's move on to another point. I could go on all day about this one because
too.
Have read a lot. Next point, and this is a big one in regards to the episode.
Yeah.
Adoption.
Okay. I, generally speaking, am pro-adoption, but the circumstances under which adoptions happen need more oversight.
Yes.
Need more consideration around the ethics. A lot of people view adoption, especially international adoption, as a way of rescuing children from poverty. When one really big question we could be asking instead, or in addition, is what can we do for those countries so that the problem of children suffering isn't such a big problem?
Yeah.
What can we do for those families, for those parents, so that they're not constantly being pushed to send their children away?
Yeah.
There's a lot of white saviorism that comes into play with some forms of international adoption as well, where people will be looked at as these angels who are rescuing children from these war-torn countries. It's like, stop bombing countries then. You know, I'm using bombing as kind of a catch-all term for like the way these countries tend to be torn apart economically and everything else. And it's like, okay, your country is impoverished partly because of actions of my country. It's okay. I'm just going to come take your children.
Yeah.
It's like, no, stop.
There's always a worry as to the motivations behind actions as well. So like the consent of those parents to give their children away is very tenuous at the start, because it's not necessarily that they don't want to keep and love their child, it's that they don't have the resources, or they want a better life for their kid, and there's this opportunity.
Yeah.
And then the parents themselves, like I know many lovely people who they have adopted because they've struggled with fertility, and they would want to raise a child and love a child. And there's an instinct in most of us to want to reproduce and raise a child in our way, I guess, to continue ourselves through them.
Yeah.
So that's perfectly natural, and I don't see as a problem. But some of the, like, even, like, it's our job as Christians to save these children and raise them. Like, no, your job as a Christian is to try and reduce, like, suffering and poverty so that people don't feel the need to have to get rid of children or struggle with as many issues that have caused this to be an issue. And I don't have statistics in front of me, but just from what I have seen, there seems to be a lot less issues with foster and adoption, etc., in countries that support their more struggling citizens better. And so there must be some sort of correlation there between reducing poverty and reducing the amount of children needing rescuing.
Yeah. So much to say about all of these things, which is why it's so controversial.
Yeah. Let's go on to the next point.
Okay.
Baby piercing.
I'm Peruvian.
Right. Yes.
I did not pierce my daughter's ears as a baby. My ears were pierced when I was a teeny tiny infant. I've never had a problem with that having happened.
Yeah.
I have really nice memories of like when my mom would change out my earrings for other earrings, and it was just a nice thing that I experienced growing up. And it was funny when I first took my daughter to Peru, one of the first questions that I would get from my aunties was like, why aren't her ears pierced?
Yeah.
And I'm just like, we decided not to do it. There was a part of me, when Tony and I were having this conversation, there was part of me that was like, oh, but it would be lovely to partake in that cultural tradition and that kind of thing. But it was very easy to persuade me to not do it because I was more swayed by my deeper belief that it's like, let the kid choose. Let the kid choose when she's ready.
Yeah.
So my daughter got her ears pierced, I think it was like last year. So maybe
So when she was about 6.
yeah. And she was really excited about it. And when we took her to get pierced, did the double piercings thing. I took video of it. She didn't react at all. I was amazed. Didn't even blink,
Yeah.
let alone cry. So when I do see a little baby with pierced ears, I don't get all up in arms. I don't liken it to circumcision because it's not an irreversible form of mutilation.
That's my opinion as well, because it's very reversible.
Yeah,
It's not the same.
exactly. Yeah.
All right, let's go on to the next point.
Yeah.
Oh, this is a big one.
Okay.
Breast milk versus formula.
Both.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, breastfeeding is hard, y'all.
Mm-hmm.
I struggled with it initially. And I remember in the hospital when my daughter was born, I breastfed her that teeny little bit that I was producing, but also gave her formula periodically. It wasn't a big deal to me. And when we were getting the breastfeeding thing happening properly, it was very challenging. I was in pain. She was a biter.
Oh, yeah.
It was excruciating. Eventually, we found our groove and things started working properly. I was producing a lot of milk. I became a breast milk donor.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, because I could do that. But even that was only because the hospital had a program to collect breast milk donations for premature babies.
Yeah.
And,
Which is so useful for them because they need every advantage in their immune response.
Yeah.
Which is why.
and they can't process formula the way
Yeah.
non-premature babies can.
Yeah.
So, yeah, if you want to breastfeed, great. If you want to formula feed, great. I have no judgment against anyone who chooses one over the other.
Yeah.
Just feed your kid. It's fine.
A mentally stable parent is far more important
Exactly.
to a child's upbringing.
Yeah.
Okay. Next point. CIO method versus other.
Oh, cry it out.
Oh, right.
Yeah, the cry it out method versus not crying it out. I don't know enough about the cry it out method to know exactly where the line is between a kid who's just crying and a kid who's being left to cry it out.
Yeah.
Like, I think people have different tolerances for how long they can listen to their kid cry before they have to intervene. I did not do that. Like, I'm all for cuddling and nurturing my kid as needed.
Yeah.
I don't have strong opinions about that one.
I've just had neighbors where it was hours on end of this, like, because we're programmed to find it distressing.
Yeah.
And, like, I was losing my mind. I was like, I need to comfort a child.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, I can handle it for a little bit, but the wails turn into, like, this death cry.
Yeah.
It's horrible.
It's like, we can't pretend it's easy to get a kid to stop crying either. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, I don't know. Maybe I just don't know enough about what cry it out actually means.
Yeah, I'm not a parent, so I probably can't say much.
Yeah.
Okay, next point. Spanking.
I'm not in favor of spanking. Like, I wouldn't spank my kid. I've never felt the impulse to.
Yep.
There have been times where she has pushed me, like, right to the limits and then beyond. But my go-to was never, I shall strike this child and this will make it stop acting out.
Yeah.
Because I can't visualize myself causing pain to that tiny little being.
Yeah.
She's just too cute.
And psychologically, there's only evidence that it's going to do the opposite of what you want to achieve.
Yeah.
And or have an incredibly submissive child due to trauma, but that's
Yeah.
not what we're looking for.
No. Don't like.
Yeah. Okay, next point. Co-sleeping.
Co-sleeping, I did a little bit of that with my kiddo when she was a little bit older. I mean, it was a couple of months before we did anything like that, but we were really careful about it. When she was an infant, we had her in a little side cot next to the bed, and we had kind of a traditional style futon very close to the ground, and then the cot on a little table next to it.
Yeah.
And most of the time she slept in that cot. But then there were times where she was feeding a lot at night. They were like, if we place her next to me, then it's much easier to just roll over to the side, give her a little feed.
Yeah.
And I tell you what, when we got that routine down, everyone slept so much better.
Yeah.
It was glorious.
Yeah, I think you should know yourself well enough to know whether you're one of those heavy, deep sleepers that's likely to, like, roll on top of anything and
And I'm
not notice. Yeah, like,
I'm just not.
I'm not going to roll on top of a lumped up blanket, even, like a little lump in the blanket, and not wake up enough to be like, what's I'm lying on?
Yeah.
But yeah, and you can also get like those little barriers to help with protecting the baby from a bit of a rollover as well.
Yeah.
All right, next point. Home versus public versus private versus charter schooling.
Public school.
Yeah.
Now, I mean, that gets my vote. Homeschooling seems great in theory, but you have to really have the capacity to do that and not need to have other forms of employment throughout the day, for example.
Yeah.
Private schooling, I feel like if you want your kid to have an exceptional education, you help fund the public school system.
Yeah. Yeah. It does seem very class system-y to me. And I should say I have been to private school and was homeschooled most of my life.
Yeah.
I have lots to say on homeschooling. It was good for me.
Yeah.
I'm neurodivergent.
Yeah.
I wasn't going to cope as best in school. However, I have 2 teachers as parents, but they weren't working as teachers and they owned their own business. So they were able to like flex around teaching us. All right. But enough about schooling. Next one, vaccinations.
I vaccinated my child. Yep. I have yet to hear any solid, irrefutable arguments against vaccination. I've heard a bunch of different arguments, but again, I'm very much into the research, the science, the critical thinking, not contrarian thinking that had me go, all right, yep, time to vaccinate, let's do it.
Yep.
Okay.
All right. Next point.
Yep.
Medicating children.
I think it depends on what it is they're suffering from.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's between you and a professional
Exactly.
doctor.
Exactly.
Yeah.
If they need it, they should get it.
Yeah. I don't think there's much more to say about that. We're not doctors. Next point. Cloth versus disposable diapers.
I did both. Yep. I tried to use cloth diapers as much as possible with my daughter, but there were times where, disposables were just more convenient.
Yeah.
I don't like the environmental impact of the waste that's produced but with disposable diapers. So we did what we could to minimize our need for it, but we didn't abstain from them completely.
Yeah.
And we were fine with that.
Next point, and the last point, store-bought baby food versus homemade.
Both. I mean, it's like when we had some time to blend up food, like we always had like stuff frozen in the freezer to give the kid when it was handy. But yeah, I mean, if I'm out and about and get some pouches or jars of stuff to give the kid, 100%.
Yeah, there's so many good ones out there too.
Yeah, they're not all filled with a bunch of preservatives and things like that.
And they're delicious. And I just wanted to make a quick point.
Yeah.
So many of these are really based in your privilege to be able to even have a choice.
Yeah.
Or
Yeah.
be... And even if you wanted to do, like, you might want to breastfeed, but you work 3 jobs.
Yep.
Like, that's not fair. But what's a person to do?
Yeah.
Yeah, you want to use reusable nappies, but you just don't have the time. You don't have a washing machine at home. You don't.
Yeah.
It's one of those things,
Yeah.
like, where intersectionality is even more important to bring into the conversation.
Yeah.
So thank you, Leslie, for going through these controversial questions with me. And I've learnt a bit about parenting.
Anytime you want to babysit, just knock on the door and be like, hey, you, get out.
Sure, let's go. I'm up for babysitting.
Yeah. Thanks, Meka.
Yeah, thanks, Leslie. Bye.
Bye.